Hi there. I am Ana Karina Luna. I'm a writer, I'm a visual artist, and also an astrologer and a tarot reader. And today I want to speak to you about the archetype of Leos. Not every characteristic, but one specific thing that I've seen over and over being repeated in chats and over the internet. So there are a few archetypes, a few zodiac signs, which are not yet well understood. All of them have something that is not understood, but some have more things. One of them is Leo. And I think the time is coming for people to understand Leo a little better, especially now that Jupiter is in Leo, and that the north nodes are going to enter, the north and the south nodes are going to enter the axis, the Leo Aquarius axis. All right, so one thing that I see a lot is people saying that Leos like to perform, or that Leos perform. And it's been a while that I wanted to deepen this conversation, because performance is, in essence, not a trait of the archetype of Leos. Performance is actually, at least in our culture, when we say performance, we mean that somebody is doing something inauthentic, right? That they are doing something, representing or acting up or expressing something they are not. Well, in my work, in the natal charts that I read and the people that I have been around, I've been noticing that it's not Leos who are performing. Guess who I notice that do some performing? Various types of personalities are more prone to performance. But instead of Leos, I noticed that it's opposite. Aquarius is the one that does some performing without noticing. I know, you probably appalled, like, what do you mean? I ask you to open your mind now, because in fact, we're gonna enter here taboo zone. Leo is an archetype that's not very well accepted in our society in some of its traits, and I will clarify that in a minute. And so when we tend to undo this, I notice something inside people starts resisting. And what starts resisting is exactly that, those parts of Leo which are not well understood and are hidden in everybody somehow, because everybody has Leo in their chart somewhere. And so I ask you to relax and open your mind, because this is going to be very beneficial. What we're going to talk about it here, but we're going to be hitting a place where we're probably going to be getting close to our inner child. So why do I say that Aquarius are the some, especially Aquarius sun, I see with some performance? Well, what I notice is two things. One is that the archetype of Leo is an archetype connected to the authentic, the unique, the expression of of the real, an expression of a truth. Why is that? Because this archetype is ruled by the sun. And the sun is a principle of truth, of clarity, of transparency, of being what it is, shining its own light without lies, shining the right light. So when we talk about sun in terms of symbolism, which is connected to Apollo, the god Apollo, we talk about something that it doesn't involve lies, it involves clarity, it involves authenticity, and the truth of oneself. So the Leo archetype usually has a real allergy for anything that's not true. I'm talking about here about the archetype first, right? Meaning the pure archetype. So it wants nothing to do with lies or with pretending or with being what it is not. In fact, this archetype, for example, especially sun, people who have the sun in Leo, they have a true sense of smell when they notice something inauthentic, when they notice lies, they notice when somebody's not saying the truth or they're not even being themselves. And sometimes, amazingly, even the person is not noticing. It's unconscious. It's the person is doing that, and the Leo, the person who has the strong Leo archetype, is noticing that. Okay, let's go to Aquarius. Aquarius is a sign that's ruled differently from Leo. It's co-ruled by two planets. Originally, it was ruled by Saturn. It's traditional ruler, and then when Uranus was discovered, it became the modern ruler of Aquarius. So Aquarius is co-ruled by Saturn and Uranus, which are opposite or opposite energies. Uranus brings the new, brings the revolution, brings novelty and the different. And Saturn represents the tradition, represents the old, represents how things have always been done. So in mythology, this is a famous fight between the principles of Saturn, who wants to keep things as they are, and the energy of Uranus, which wants to topple things, wants to turn the game and experiment things in another way. Invention and tradition, right? That old fight. So Aquarius, people, especially people with sun in Aquarius, but not only, but the archetype itself, it gets usually caught up between these two urges. So I noticed that our Aquarius, especially sun, people with sun in Aquarius, they want very much to belong, because Saturn has this social responsibility, this way wants to do things properly. So it keeps the order and there is a social responsibility in Saturn. And at the same time, Aquarians feel the need to innovate, to have new ideas, Uranus, to wake up to new ways to doing things. They think of like the cosmos. They every time, like for example, Pluto is in Aquarius now, and every time Pluto is in Aquarius, mankind advances very much deeper into the cosmos to find out what's there. So when you talk about contradictorily, when you talk about Aquarius, you are talking about somebody who is visionary and connected to the future, likes new ideas, feels themselves different, and at the same time they pay attention to the order, to the social grid, to the social norms, and they don't want to break that completely. They don't have an interest in exploding the whole world and ending social order. They want to change it, but because they're mindful of others, and they wanted to allow that, the others exist too, other ways of being exist too. So they usually get caught up in this. So I notice, and I'll give you practical ideas, examples. I've had people who wanted to write a book, and but they're not writers. They don't have a story exactly. They haven't started writing. And for example, they came to me to ask if I could read what they would write. And as I started asking about this story, there was no story. They weren't they didn't know, they wanted to tell some story that was about somebody else and not from a first direct experience. Not that you have to, but you have to have some connection to what you're going to talk about. You have to have some content that's coming from you somehow so you can connect, so you're not copying, or you're not disconnecting, making up some disconnected story. The disconnection, the word disconnecting is a very Aquarian word. Aquarians are known to disconnect from the heart because Leos rule the heart, that bomb, that impulse, that very passionate pulse, and it's always in contact with that truth all the time. So Leos, it's impossible for Leos to get away from that sense of the heart, the truth of the heart. And when we talk about the heart, it's similar to talking about the sun. We're talking about a place of truth. The heart does not lie. It's impossible because it's the type of energy. Guess who lies? The mind. So the mind is ruled by the element air. So Leos are ruled by fire, heart, sun, and Aquarius is ruled by air, which rules the mind. And the mind is this place in our lives as human beings where we can lie, because the mind has language. And language can be very misleading. You can say things that you don't do. It's very easy. There is this way that says like, well, it's easy to say that, but try doing it. Because when you do it, you're gonna meet the truth of the thing. So that said, while the Leo archetype is very connected to the center of truth, the Aquarius archetype does the opposite. It takes this truth and spreads this truth to the collective or to the body. So the Aquarius rules the arteries. It's responsible for taking this information and is spreading as much as possible, which is an amazing honor too. It's a beautiful, I love this archetype. These two archetypes, they are part of an axis called the love axis, which is super important. So it's about love for the truth and taking that to bringing the good news, the good news and the good truths to where it needs to get to. But Aquarius, imagine when the blood full of truth and full of pulse gets to the feet. It's very far from the heart. It's blue, it's cold, it's far. It needs to remember that truth, that pulse, that impact, and sometimes it forgets. And eventually it comes back. It needs to come back and pass again around the heart, get in contact with that truth again, and go distribute it again. But in this, when it's far away, Aquarius, sometimes they forget about this truth and they become mixed with wherever they are. So it's very common to Aquarius likes to kind of a little bit get lost in the mob. Of course, without losing it. Its sense that the correct way for an Aquarius is not to lose its sense of himself or herself, Uranus, right? But sometimes they do. And when they do, so I've seen many Aquarians who are trying to act on talents they don't have, techniques they haven't developed, information they haven't created, or information they had collected from the internet, from other people's. And in the air element, Gemini and Libra and Aquarius, in the air element, there is this confusion a little bit. Everything is kind of vapors, right? What is mine? What is the other? This happens a little bit within the water element too. The water element happens more around emotions, and with the air element around information. So I noticed Aquarius, sometimes they're so connected to the whole that they don't have this sense that, no, I said that, I created that. Not that this has to be all important all the time. But also it's not this important. It's not important. It's important to have clarity about things. It's not a good deal to be talking about something that somebody didn't create, that somebody spent 20 years studying, creating, and coming up with that. And then an Aquarius gets somewhere and says that, and it doesn't give credit. And especially in the world we still live, where people are, where we still have this sense, what's mine, what's the others. And so what I want to leave here with is that, so performance, there is a difference between performance and self-expression. I think this is the confusion. And Leos, especially Sun, they self-express. They express what they're feeling inside. There is no way to be otherwise, because they are constantly being in touch with their heart. And the heart itself is a very rigorous place. It requires truth. So they can't escape. They're much more attached and rigid in that truth. So the Leo archetypes, it tends to have a real allergy with lies in performance, to be who is not. So I hear all the time people saying that Leos, giving them advice like, don't try to be who you're not. Don't try to get have a talent you don't have. This is not true. This is not true about Leos. Now, what can happen is that, putting the Sun aside, so if you have somebody that has a Pluto in Leo or a Moon in Leo, so certain planets can make bad use of that energy. But that is not in that energy, the lying, which is what performance would be, to be acting up something is not true to your core, is not a characteristic of the archetype of Leo. But some planets, some are malefic, and they can make bad use of that energy. So if a person might have too many of those, this person could be a Leo or could not be a Leo, a Sun Leo. And so things can get a little messed up. So I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, so for example, the generation of Pluto in Leo, it's a generation known for its arrogance, certain pride. They have a king living in their belly, but it's due to Pluto that expands this power without responsibility. So let me talk a little bit about Leos. Leo has what's called the Christic, like a Christ-like energy, the archetype. All right, the archetype, I'm talking about the pure energy, has a Christ-like energy because of the connection with the Sun, with the Father, right? It's a masculine sign. So they're very generous, they're very passionate. What it might happen sometimes is that a Leo might be expressing, self-expressing what he or she is truly feeling. There is no performance. But our society doesn't deal well with this expression. Why? Because that enters what I told you, that some archetypes are not well understood yet, because we haven't developed as humankind to integrate the best part of that energy. And the best part of the energy of Leo is the ability to have sovereignty over yourself, to be yourself without shame, without guilt, to shine your light without without having to be excusing yourself or to be ashamed of your light. But we live already many years. We live in patriarchy for like 6,000 years, and patriarchy messed up a lot of stuff. But we live in a society where there is a lot of narcissism. What is narcissism? Narcissism is sort of a condition, a mental, a psychic condition, where a child has gone through a very difficult situation, so intense that he could not deal with it. And so it's like her or his mind shuts. And then he loses contact with the self inside, and therefore he loses contact with the others. So narcissists, they don't see the other because they don't see themselves. They don't have, it's considered a disease too, but it's a condition, and it's due to very much pain. They become dangerous somewhat because they become in certain areas of their life, they become almost like a child that wants everything and doesn't see anybody's needs. And this has been very connected to the archetype of Leo, but Leos in the core are the opposite of this. The archetype of Leo is about seeing oneself, and as I see myself, I can see the other. That's why it's said that the mission of Leos and the great blessing that the archetype of Leo can bring is to be able to, because they're doing well with their own self, they have the right measure and value and self-esteem, they can see that in other people too. So they transfer that. But like I said, there are certain situations where, like for example, the Pluto in Leo generation from 1960s, I think it was like 20 years, maybe, 40s until maybe 69. I'm kind of guessing here, but it's maybe probably starts around not 69 to 61, right? So this generation, there are a lot of narcissism going on because Pluto, it brings vices, Pluto produces toxic environment. So these people probably couldn't be seen for who they were. So this is not very easy to understand. I know that. I'm trying my best here to explain. It's very psychological, but if there are probably therapists or psychoanalysts watching, they might be understanding this. So if you or somebody you know have difficulty with somebody who is a sun in Leo, which I hear that a lot of some people say like, oh God, I hate people who are Leos, and there is some people have had bad experiences. A lot of times the experience has to do with the fact that the Leos in a society where people cannot be themselves, it hurts to see somebody being themselves to the full extent of who they are. And they're not going to be nice. Being yourself is not being nice, or it's not a moral thing. Being yourself is being true to who you truly are. So Leos are experts in that. So if a Leo is giving, for example, an opinion about something, and it's a true opinion, maybe somebody who wants to also to give an opinion, a true opinion, but cannot do that because he keeps thinking of other people, or is ashamed, or he kind of omits, or doesn't have the courage, because the Leo archetype has this characteristic of vulnerability as the person to put its heart on the table when it says something, when it does something. It opens, it says the truth, even if it could be attacked, judged, disliked. So this is one of the big gifts of the archetype of Leo, to be vulnerable in order to be true. And there is a card in the tarot called Strength, where there is usually there is a lion there. And it talks about this strength is the strength of vulnerability, the strength of being who you are, saying your truth, even though some people might not like it. Of course, I'm not talking about here of hurting people. Sometimes we say truths that even if we say with neutrality, but because that truth might touch somebody's trauma, that person is going to feel attacked. So not everything that people feel are ours, right? So there's a difference here in being aggressive and saying a truth that might bring pain in people, but it's not because of the truth itself. It's because there is a trauma inside of the person that is touched. In truth, sometimes hurts. There is even a saying that says, I forgot how it says, but it says that the truth, it pains you, but it saves you. So and Leos tend to be very direct in those things. So there's, like I said, we live in a society that is a hypocritical society. This is one of the biggest characteristics of patriarchy, hypocrisy. The ability, the vice of saying one thing and doing another. This is the biggest, maybe the biggest mark of patriarchy, and this is a characteristic made by the mind. Is the mind that is a hypocrite. Our mind has the potency to be hypocrite. It doesn't have to be, but it has, because it has the capacity of lying. The heart doesn't have the capacity of lying. It's impossible because of its own nature. So hypocrisy is a characteristic of air element. It could be, doesn't mean that every air and every mind is hypocritical. No, the mind, the air, all elements are amazing. They're beautiful. And when air is well integrated, it has clarity. And it hears the heart. It gives passage to the heart, the true wise one. So see how complicated it is? So Leos bring a concept that is still to be discovered, and it's about to be discovered, and that's why I'm talking about this, which is this ability of seeing myself for what I am truly. And almost none of us had this opportunity growing up, just because of the way our society and the rules and all the suffering that happens. So it's passing through from generation to generation. Parents that were not seen tend to not be able to see their kids because they can't see themselves. And how are you going to see others if you can't see? This is called narcissism. In fact, planet Earth is like riddled with narcissism. There is a lot of narcissism. And it's very sad that they equate this to Leos, because Leos are the least egotistical. I know that you hear this, you're going to say, this lady is crazy, but that's why I'm here, to unmake this mistake. Go look and go study and go research and pay attention for yourself. Ask the people you know who are Leos. In fact, there are a lot of more Leos hidden, not shining, because a sun Leo goes through a lot of pressure. When it starts expressing itself, the surroundings usually does not afford that. It cannot sustain that, and it says, shut up. And so then it says, you're wanting to show yourself too much, but it's not that. It's trying to express. What people should be doing is the opposite. And this is the biggest thing we can learn with Leos. Instead of calling the archetype of Leo egotistical, selfish, arrogant, narcissistic, these are not true, because this is the most generous archetype, connected to the heart. The heart is the center of the body, is the strongest of all centers. This is an archetype that is connected to the sun itself. keep in mind that when you say, somebody says, I'm a Virgo, they say, my sun is in Virgo, my identity is in Virgo, my truth is in Virgo. When somebody says, I am a Taurus, they mean, my sun is in Taurus, my identity is Taurian, my truth is in Taurus. So imagine, so this is the symbol we use to talk about identity. So imagine a sign that it's in domicile, it's at home, that the actual planet that rules this sign is the sun itself, the symbol, the principle we use to determine the identity of all the other signs. So Leo archetype needs to be found out in this way, because there is a little bit of a respect that needs to come from this. And I know you listening to this, like, oh, there comes, she's saying that the archetype of Leo is demanding respect. But we know so little about sovereignty. When I say the archetype of Leo needs a little more respect, this is good for all of us, because we don't want it to pay, we don't want it to pay our respects to Leo, the archetype of Leo, because we're not being able to pay our respects to our own truth, to our own sense of identity, to our own bright light, to our generous heart, which everybody has. So Leos, they are very good at encouraging people to follow their talents. They see people's talents before people see themselves. They see people's light before the people themselves see them. That's why they're a leader, because a good leader puts people up. So when a Leo goes up on a stage to dance, be sure it's inviting you, it's saying, look how it's done. Come up here and do it with me. You won't see a sun in Leo telling somebody to get out of the stage because they're there. You might see Pluto in Leo maybe, or Moon in Leo maybe. It doesn't have to be all of that. It's a very, Leos are a very cheering, joyful, happy go along, you know, they're happy. It's about celebrating the joy of life. So start noticing, start rethinking about the ideas you have about Leos, because you might have had bad experiences, and because those open up traumas in you. There is a collective trauma around the archetype of Leo, and that's why Leos, people feel like irritate. They don't irritate, but because of the trauma, they feel bad about. So like I said, if you are around a Leo, a sun in Leo, that is shining, that it's comfortable expressing yourself, and you're feeling annoyed, check with yourself which part of you wants, needs, is begging you to see, to be seen by you and to express. You're going to find out almost in 100% of the cases that if you are annoyed by a Leo, it's a place of you that Leo moved, a place inside of you that wants to show. And you, your mother, your father, all the conditioning you have is saying like, shut up. You're not going to do this. You're not going to say anything. And then you say to the Leo, because it's too painful to say to yourself. So what I really plead here, everybody, because we need this as a collective. We need not to perform. This is not about performance. This is about learning what self-expression is about. And we are so annoyed. We're so traumatized. We're so pained by it, that the archetype of Leo, which is an amazing, think about it, it's an amazing archetype, and it's irritating us because it shines, right? I mean, we developed, the sun does not produce cancer in us. It's not the sun who produces cancer. Our skin reacts to this light of the sun. I'm talking metaphysics here, okay? Internal attitudes that show as symptoms in the body. So our own shame, our own guilt, our own resistance to be shown upon rejects that light and transforms that in trash, in cancer on top of our skin, because we cannot receive the light. Like when we're in a stage and the light is all on us, we can't receive that. So we produce a cancer. We corrupt the whole thing. So let me see what else I have here to say. This is a very difficult thing to explain, but I hope I'm making sense. So Leos don't have this conflict inside. Aquarians do. Leos don't have conflict about, they might be traumatized too. A lot of them are, because usually they try to express who they were, which is a natural thing. Expression is a Leo keyword, and then immediately they were shut down, and because the parents could not sustain that, they felt bad. Because they couldn't express. So who do you think you are to express yourself if I haven't been given this opportunity? So that's what we've been doing with this Leo energy in us, right? So we don't express ourselves because we didn't learn how. If somebody comes and express themselves, we say they're performing, we say they're lying, we're saying awful things about them, that they're selfish. And this is not we need to undo this in our minds. That's why I said we're talking about something taboo here, because we learned that shining, and this is gonna touch us inside emotionally. It's gonna feel a little bad, as you listen this, because that part inside yourself, that inner child, is gonna say like, what? I want to shine too. I want to express myself too. We need to learn how to do that, and there is space for everybody to express themselves. In expressing ourselves doesn't have to be a lot of Leos. I know a lot of Leos who are not this exaggeration that everybody says, like there are certain Leos that they are more flashy, because depends on the decan, the time of the month that you came. That they came. So the month, it's 30 degrees of Leo, right? So the first 10, they're ruled by the sun. So they're very Leo-like. They tend to express themselves easily. Maybe they're the ones that, go out, dressed out, shining, Then the next one is the second 10 days of the period, the Leo period, and they're ruled by Sagittarians. So they're more fun, very optimist. And then there is the last 10 degrees, which are ruled by Mars. And these are more serious. They are more, they can be a little more, they like they're more direct. If they need to fight for something, they will. These are also the ones that get things done, because they're very direct, and they know how to do their action because of Mars. So they get things done, right? So Leos don't have, so pay attention to this. Leos don't have a conflict about themselves. Therefore, they are on the side of the truth. So performance is not an option for them. The ones who have conflicts are Aquarius, who are ruled by two forces that are opposite, and they get lost in that. So I've seen also Aquarius who are not performing, of course. I love Aquarians. I came to love all the signs because I'm amazed by all of them. They're beautiful. They're beautiful. All the signs have beautiful, beautiful, beautiful missions and beautiful blessings to teach us. So Aquarius have amazing things too. And I've seen, they can be great artists. They are very prone to, connected to art. It's the axis of love, of creation, in a sense. Love, get this, what a nexus, right? Is these two polar opposites who are complementary. Their theme is love. And when we say love, we say everything that loves encompasses, including creation. So it's a very creative axis. Leo's more into this true self-expression, and Aquarius more into spreading this good news. They just have not to, Aquarius just have to be careful to not get lost, from their true uniqueness, which they have, right? Our civilization is not used to true self-expression, and he actually talks bad about that. There is also when we are, it's horrible when we cannot express ourselves. We become bitter. We become jealous of somebody who's expressing themselves. So we look at this. We see in a mistaken way. So if a Leo is expressing themselves from their truth, the person, our civilization tends to see like that they are lying or exaggerating. We see expression as exaggeration. Do you know what I mean? It's been corrupted. The idea of light has been corrupted, and the more you corrupt this idea, then you produce a weird, caricatured Leo archetype, which is the archetype that everybody is leading with. When the archetype, the Leo archetype that people they're dealing with. I mean leading, that dealing with. God, messed up here in my language. So what I'm trying to undo here is this mistake in the truth of this archetype, because patriarchy has caricatured a lot of concepts. It has caricatured food. We don't need nutritious food. We need fake food, right? Not going to mention any more than this. It has caricatured erotic energy into what? Pornography. So everything that's true and essential and beautiful, patriarchy, which is a system very ruled by the mind. Patriarchy means more than male. It means very rational way to exist. So the mind does not reach into certain essential things. The heart does. The mind has difficulty with that. Osho talked about that a lot. So the mind looks at what's essential and deep and hidden and unspeakable, right? Or of that which is true. And the mind finds a way to put that in words or bring to the concrete. And when it does that, there is a big chance that we'll banalize it and characterize it. So Leo deals with this core energy, this essential energy. Everything about the Leo archetype is about essential, core, center, the deepest truth, the bare truth, because of the energy of the sun, which is ruling and lending all of its characteristics to this archetype. It's ruled by it. So see what I mean? If it's ruled by it, performance is not an option. So we've been mistaking expression, self-expression, true self-expression, for performance, because we've been taught that if you express, you're no good. You're trying to show up more than anybody. And this is the trauma in us, because when we don't see ourselves, when we don't allow ourselves to express, any expressions sounds like too exaggerated, sounds like too dramatic. In fact, we are very intense. The human experience is very intense, but this has been robbed from us. So Leo can bring that back, that intensity, that passion. But for that, we need to allow this melt a little bit and stop resisting light, shine. When you see people who are shining, when if they have the courage, because it requires courage to go up a stage. You might think that it doesn't, but it does. Whatever type of courage, if they go up there, admire that, and ask if you don't also have that wish. And if you do, you work on that. You try to find yourself a stage. What else? I think I said everything. Follow Leo's lead, right? I think I said everything. So thank you for watching, and leave your questions there. I know this is a very controversial subject. And like I said, I ask you to open your hearts and your minds when you listen to this, to think about this. Be very gentle with yourself, because what I'm talking about here goes against the conditioning that we received, and we know the conditioning tightens us and resists going away. So it's almost like we don't want to listen that we deserve to shine. It almost hurts. And because if we get in touch with that, it's going to be so painful that it's easier to say, oh, these people are so showy, performative. We project out, so we don't deal with that energy of creation that's wanting to get out, because this is the energy that Leos deal with. Like I said, this is the axis of love. Leos create this energy by the pulsation of the heart, and Aquarius distribute it. Make sure it gets everywhere to everybody. So to Aquarius, be sure that you bring the good news and you tell where you got that, right? If it's from somebody else's, make sure you give credit to people. If it's yours, if you worked hard to do that, and so it's yours, but make sure that you're true to the information and to the message you're bringing. So there's lots of things more that I could be saying about that. My intention here is not to put down any of the signs, but we need to be fair with Leos. They get a really bad rap, and that's very unjust. And this is a very difficult thing for the archetype, the Leo archetype, because if there is something that Leos are, is the archetype of Leo is a just archetype. It's a generous archetype. Many times they don't do things to themselves to help others. They overextend. A lot of them are hiding and hidden, and you won't tell that they're Leos, and they sometimes are holding their whole family, or it's very common to Leos to be in a room where whatever it is, a party or a business meeting, and they are holding the energy together, bringing it up, and nobody's noticing that. It's because it has this magnetic energy. Another thing is that Leos bring a lot of presence when they are with people. They're very present. They people feel special with them. So let's learn to appreciate these things. And people say that the opposite of Leos, that a lot of astrologers know that Leos have these beautiful traits. The problem is when they go talk about what's bad in Leo, they go to this side that it's arrogant, and these are not the correct words. The opposite of Leos, actually, when they're not shining, it's that they're hidden, they're negating. They learned, a lot of Leos learn that because a lot of them go through this in childhood. They cannot shine. That energy that wants to get out cannot get out. It's squashed, and they learn to fit, to make themselves so small, to fit in a small little box, and they're still helping people outside. So then you're going to say, well, so what is, there is this Leo energy that it's kind of like narcissistic. Like I said, only when a planet, a bad planet, let's say be very direct, a malefic planet, it makes bad use of that energy. You can make bad use of any energy, right? Geminis are amazing information people, but you can. Well, this is probably not a very good because lying, for example, is a very common with Gemini archetype. But this is in the core. That's not even the disintegrated part. It's in the core of the archetype because they do it without noticing sometimes because they see multiple options. They don't see it in the same way. And then the air element can very easily get into lying or into performing without noticing. And if you know the tarot, you're going to see that not all elements work equal or value equal. The air element in the tarot is the weakest because it represents the mind. It's the weakest link. It's the one that can be corrupted. The fire element cannot be corrupted. The earth element, it could be difficult to be corrupted, but the most difficult one is the heart element, the fire element, because it's signed a deal with truth. It's, earth is not about, the main thing is not about truth. Water, the main thing is not about truth. Air is not at all about truth, the main thing. But the fire element has signed a contract with truth. It's in its core. So that's what I'm trying to alert everybody here, including astrologers. Stop talking about a type of characteristic that's not in the archetype. This is a mistake. This is a patriarchal view about a characteristic that's about sovereignty and shine in the self that knows itself. But because patriarchy has caricatured everything, when it sees an I, it always thinks like, oh, arrogant. The I is the beginning of everything. But it's because the patriarchy is very ruled by air, the mind, which is the weakest link. Because fire is heart, earth is body, instinct, right? Earth is instinct, which is also not able to be corrupted because it's very true. It's very, very real. It's our cerebellum, our last reptile brain here. It cannot be corrupted. It can be shut up, but it cannot be corrupted. It is what it is. So in water is the emotions running in the body. So the emotions, they can be manipulated by the mind, for example. And the mind is the most manipulating of all. So the elements have this characteristic. So the fire is a very pure element. Let's be in the know of this. So I hope this helps. And if you have questions, put it in the comments and say your. Now this can get very complex because we are not because that's why I'm talking about archetypes mainly and not people only, because people can have, they can have a bit of Aquarius, a bit of Leo, and then each case is different. But there is a confusion, and this confusion is about to end. And I'll tell you one more thing. What I think that the South Node in Leo is going to give us, it's not that Leos are going to lose their selfishness, as astrologers have been saying. They've been saying that because they're thinking Leos in the wrong eyes, as having the ability of being selfish. How can a super generous sign that is intrinsic, that can be you can't be selfish if you're generous? This is a mistake from people seeing from the outside, not knowing deeply. We don't know the Leo's archetype energy yet as humanity, because it's Christ-like. It's Christ-like. So all we know about Leos is a caricature. And that's what I'm trying to undo here. So in my view, what the South Node is gonna take away from Leo, because the South Node is what it stays behind, right? What's thrown away, and the North Node is what it's getting here, and we're gonna acquire that. So what we're gonna lose from Leo is not that it's selfish. We're gonna lose this wrong idea about Leos. We're going to wake up to the Christ, like to the truth of Leos, which most people don't know that. They don't know that it has such a potent in curative and healing. I think this is going to heal a lot of people, because we need that energy, which is self-love, which is coming back to see oneself, to love oneself. Most of the hatred in the world has to do with self-hatred. If we hate ourselves so much because we've been hated, it's generation after generation. If you're not seen, you ended up feeling like, I'm not worthy. Why they treat me like that? Why this? Why that? And then we've been passing, instead of passing, raising with love, we've been raising without rejection. So the Leo energy is a healing one, because it brings, it cleans rejection, and it opens up to come here. You are worthy. You are a jewel. You are precious. You're pure gold. Thank you. See you next time.